Hello, everyone. Getting this whole thing started. Are we live? Yes, we are live on X. And we are not live on YouTube yet. Oh, we are live. Very good. Let me just fix the little technical problems. Okay, perfect. Welcome, everyone, to today's Pioneer Pulse Live. So we do this now more frequently, and we will discuss important topics. And what we will do now is each pulse will be actually about a single topic. So either Tesla or about AI or about the latest in politics as it relates to Earth and our future. So today will be Tesla Day, and we will have two important topics that I will chop up into two segments. And these two topics, you will also be able to see them later in a dedicated video on two dedicated videos. But if you're here live, you will get it first. So let's jump right into it. Hello and welcome everyone to this important Tesla stock scenario analysis. Because as you know, we will go into June, we will have Robotaxi launch, and I discussed it a lot, what my Robotaxi launch model actually says and what we do about it. And what we want to do today is go into the details of scenarios. What is the stock likely going to do, or what could it do in May, and what could it do in June, and what does it mean for us as shareholders and for us as potential call options holders or leap options holders? That is the key question, and we want to jump into that. So, if you are a stockholder and you just have Tesla shares and you hodl them, hold on for dear life, there's not much to say here other than that I'm very bullish. My long-term target of 11,000 for 2030, if we continue on the trajectory we are on. I think there are many reasons to believe we will continue Optimus and Robotaxi. And as shareholders long-term, I don't think there's too much to fear. Not investment advice, but I'm all in on Tesla. Now, the problem is that some of us are very greedy, including me. And we see this enormous opportunity that Robotaxi and later on Optimus are going to present. And this opportunity is not just an enormous multi-trillion-dollar margin and profit stream, but it's also alpha, which means most analysts massively underestimate what's going to happen. And that's very good if you're into options or stocks, because it means you can get into something that is undervalued despite overwhelming evidence. Because the traditional way of doing things, the Warren Buffett way of doing things, does not apply anymore in a world where reality engineering has become the prevalent mode of value creation, as demonstrated by the wealth tables that you see. Who are the leading richest people in the world? Everyone in the top 20 is basically a technology entrepreneur, with the exception of Warren Buffett. But Warren Buffett is not number one. Elon is number one, then Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg, and the whole crowd. So that tells you something is going on. And if you as an investor or I as an investor are smart and see these future developments early, then we can win. And Robotaxi is one of these great, great opportunities. Now, why is it so important to really zero in on what's going to happen in June and in May? As I explained, as a shareholder, not so important, because if things go up and run into the Robotaxi launch, and then something disappointing happens and the stock crashes 20% or 30%, you as a shareholder don't care, because strategically, there's no reason, as at least for now, to be worried. If FSD hits a roadblock, it's going to get fixed very quickly in long-term, timelines. Very quickly means maybe in June we flatline or have a hiccup. They have to stop doing robotaxis. It's going to be terrible for the stock. But a month later, they put them back on the road. If they fail again, a month later, they're back on the road. Then they start to scale. If scaling is difficult, well, we get delayed another 3 months and then we are back. At some point, it doesn't matter for a shareholder if we hit $1 trillion in profit through robotaxis in 2027 or 2028 or 2029. It's not that important. But if you're a leap holder or a call option holder, being right but on the wrong timeline can wipe out 100% of your investment. So as If you're greedy and into leaps, you have to be a little more tight in the predictive accuracy that we display here. So as a general rule of thumb, and I went into that in my leap model, I will cover more of the leap model very soon. You will see it on pioneerlands.net and the Pioneer Academy. You can download the model and see it. But what we want to avoid with leaps are long-running options, right? Call options that expire, in 2026, mid 2026, or end 2026, or beginning 2027. So we have some leeway. Normally, you buy them out of the money, right? So if Tesla is at 345, you maybe buy a 500 strike price, long-running option. And then if Tesla actually goes up to 600, 700, 1,000, you have massive leverage, make much more than with stocks. The problem with leaps is, depending on the leap simulator, what it tells you is that leaps can lose massive amounts of premium if the stock goes down or sideways for a certain amount of time. And of course, we don't want that, right? We don't want to be in that trap. And here's an example. Even if we predict it goes up and Robotaxi launches and scales in June, but we are wrong and it gets delayed for 2 months, and even if it kicks in then, and in the end, it turns out our leaps, if we hold through it, are fine. Even then, we will lose 50% of capital, at least on paper, maybe 60, 70% of capital on these leaps in premium in that 2 months, right? So there is a time decay that is pretty dramatic. So ideally, we want to avoid going into any kind of phase that offers that level of risk. And it's all about predicting the future accurately and squeezing the future into probabilistic corsets that we think reflect the truth. And that's the exercise of this video. We're going to go into that. So let me explain how I approach it. And you see, this is all probabilistic stuff, but it's important to develop these frameworks in our minds so we have something to think with and to look forward with. Let me first explain the framework I set up here. This is a tactical framework. So this is about the robotaxis and how many. First of all, when we talk about the framework, I came up with these different scenarios. A hiccup scenario, which means something goes wrong at launch. That could happen. Maybe there's an accident. Maybe something bad happens. Who knows? Then a flatlining scenario where we launch with 15 robotaxis in at June 1st. Let's just assume it's June 1st. Maybe it's June 7th. Who knows? But at some point in June, we launch. That is confirmed. Elon says it's going to be 10 to 20 robotaxis Model Ys on day one. So we know that. Hiccup means 2 weeks in, June 15th, and 4 weeks in, we go from 15 robotaxis to 0 because they have to pull the plug and say, oops, something went wrong. We have to stop the commercial service. That's the worst case scenario. It's not the worst case, depending on what exactly happens. Of course, if someone gets injured, that's the worst case. But if they just say, oops, something is going really wrong, we have to pull the plug, that's a little less worst case. But my worst case, it's the hiccup scenario. And we go from 15 robotaxis deployed on day one to 0 2 weeks in, to 0 4 weeks in. Yeah, that's the first scenario, right? Second scenario, we have flatlining. And in the flatlining scenario, we start with 15, 2 weeks in, we are at 15, and 4 weeks in, we are at 15. For whatever reason, they decide, there are lots of little problems. I don't want to scale this, says Elon. Let's keep it at 15 cars and keep testing this. Okay. Slow means we go from 15, 10 to 20, to 2 weeks into 20. So we add maybe 5 or a few cautious scaling in the first 2 weeks. And then in 4 weeks, we add 30, which is actually doubling. So, slow is relative, but on a very low basis. And fast means, Tesla prepared this whole thing, tested it in San Francisco with employees and in Austin, and they tested the hell out of it. They're very confident. They just want to be cautious. They launch with 10 to 20. And then after 2 weeks, they say, you know what? We have tested this so excessively. Now it's live and commercial. Just scale it, just double it to 30. And then nothing happens. Everything is perfect. Everyone is happy. And they say, double it again. So within 4 weeks, we have 4x. That is a fast scale that no one expects, right? So let's go into what that means to Wall Street sentiment. And bear with me, we go into the strategies here and the stock price scenarios, at least some. So let's go into the Wall Street sentiment. What does it do to institutional investors? What happens in a hiccup? Now, here's the interesting thing. Some argue if you have a hiccup and they pull the plug, it's going to be a disaster. The stock goes to zero. The stock goes under 200. Well, I don't think so, because the expectations that Elon has set in the short term for June are super low. He says 10 to 20 cars. And first he said on day one, now he just says 10 to 20 cars. So everyone thinks, everyone who's not a fanboy or deep into that stuff, everyone who's just an analyst says, okay, fine, don't anticipate, do not factor in Robotaxi at all into cash flow in the next 24 months, right? This is not a thing that's happening, not even long term, maybe super long term, but this is just not happening. It will be a little pilot. They will just test it around, maybe like Waymo for years and years and years, and they will scale to 100 Robotaxis maybe next year. That is the expectation right now, right? And I'm not saying that Morgan Stanley and some other guys are not very bullish on the whole thing, but no one expects it to actually work. That is not priced into the stock right now. So hiccup means Wall Street is going to say, oh, what a bummer. Let's focus on cars and Optimus. They were basically going to say, oh, this is going to take way long and it's a bummer. And it's not really going to happen. I'm not super surprised, but I'm selling some shares. If we flatline, they will say, well, that's what we thought. This will take a long while, a long time. Let's just keep observing it, but we don't take this seriously as any kind of cash flow or profit EBITDA generator that moves the needle in any way in the next 24 months. Right? And that's kind of the line, 24 months. Is there anything big happening? Are we on a trajectory that really moves the needle for the company in the next 24 months? Slow. Well, actually, I call it slow because I have actually higher expectations than slow. But Wall Street would be already surprised, right? They would say, well, that's interesting. Why are they already quadrupling here or doubling in the first month? Let's really watch this and, let's get a little more bullish maybe. And if you scale fast, everyone will be blown away. This will trigger FOMO, panic buying. They're going to, maybe not then, but maybe the month after. But for us internally, for the pros, we call you guys the pros, the people who know more than the average Wall Street analyst. We look at this like, wait, whoa. We are on the right track here. This is going to get very serious. So as you can tell, if you ask me what's going to happen, I think we are landing here. We could easily land here. We could also have hiccups and land here or here. So I don't even want to speculate too much. That's why we have the scenarios. So we are prepared. Okay, what does it all mean? I'm going to go into the scenarios right now. So if you have a scenario one, run up. So let me explain this. These are not scenarios. These are basically, we have to, it's a multi-dimensional chess game we are playing here. So we have basically two dimensions of scenarios. We have what I call scenarios, which relates to where the stock price goes in the next 2 weeks. That's my scenarios 1, 2, 3. And then we have these trajectories. Are we on the hiccup trajectory, flat, slow, or fast? So when I say scenario one, now I'm referring to, okay, let's assume, because our decision-making time is not in May. In May, I'm holding through. I'm just sharing with you guys what I'm going to do. I hold all my leaps. I'm not doing anything until June 1st or whenever this thing launches. I'm not going to do anything. I think right now we're in a good position to run up more because macro looks good, the markets look good, and June is coming up. So for me, the question is, how does the stock behave until then, and what do I do then? Now, if the stock price, and this is highly speculative, I will explain it in a second why it's important. Let's say scenario one, we see a run up into the event. So we get to 400, and then my prediction would be, if we have a hiccup, we are selling off 20%. If we are at 400, because run up means people have a higher anticipated success, right? They say, well, maybe there is something here. The hiccup would mean, no, there's nothing here. The doubters were right. They have many problems. You have to discount Robotaxi. Nothing gonna come out of this in the next 24 months. So we need to go back with the share price to anticipate Optimus and the affordable models and everything. So I think 20% sell-off from 400 in terms of hiccup is realistic. I don't think this goes lower, but let's see about that. And I think then by June 30th, they will have forgotten about Robotaxi and say, okay, let's focus on Optimus and the affordable cars, and the market will be bullish probably. And then we end up at 340. I think that's a realistic scenario in scenario one, in case of hiccup. Now, in case of flatlining, I think there will be a natural sell-off, sell the news, right? So there's basically the anticipated scenario, same with here, slow and flat, will be anticipated scenario, which means we are selling off, right? We run up, the stuff we expected happens, and we sell off. That happens with events. So we see a 5% sell-off, maybe something around that. And if we flatline and nothing happens, we could sell off more, 10% maybe. That's what I think. If we go into the slow trajectory, same thing. We start slow, same thing. We are selling off 5%. But then we see, oh, this goes to 30 and they double it in month one. Okay, let's buy it up again. So we start going up again. And we have to see what happens then. If we have fast, we trigger FOMO. Fast will trigger the FOMO situation because analysts are going to be forced to say, oh my God, if that continues, maybe it's game over. And now we're getting very nervous. Now we have to panic. Now we have to say buy this stuff. I think then we are going up like crazy. Okay. So what's very important here is I want you to think in percentage, not in absolute terms, because we cannot predict what that number is. Like, what if it runs up to 480 or 420 or 430? What if it happens to run up to 380? Like, we don't know that exact number. So you have to think in percentages here. These are my estimates. The absolute numbers are just relative to this. Why is this so important? So it's so important because what I'm saying here is not pure speculation, right? What is not speculation is these things have to be measured. We have to measure them. So there won't be speculation. These are just firm future scenarios, and one of them will become more true than the others. So this is just a question of measurement, not speculation. And then this here, well, that's also not speculation. Something is going to happen before June 1st. And then this here is speculation, right? The speculation, if this happens and if this happens, what happens to the share price? Of course, I cannot guarantee if we have 400 and we have a fast trajectory that it goes to 480. It could go to 580. It could go to 420. Who knows? But here's what I do know. Here's what I do know. We have these little things here, and these come from the model that I was sharing with you guys, where we model out the actual EBITDA contribution. So here, this is not share price speculation. This is what's going to happen on the different trajectory: fast, expected, slow. The hiccup I kicked out here, so it's basically, it's basically fast, slow, and flat because I stretched slow and fast out into 3 basically. So blue is very close to flat. But what you see here, the green line is $12.4 billion in EBITDA. That is 2024. That's basic profit, right? So the profit of Tesla in 2024 was the green line, 12 billion. And so you see what's happening here. And that is 2026, end of 2026. And in December, this will already be clear in December 2025. And if you're smart and you zoom more in, so this is monthly, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, you can see that these expected trajectories are driving very quickly up, and they're driving very quickly into these annual ones. And that's what the analysts have to recognize. The analysts have to recognize if Robotaxi turns out to double the entire profit of Tesla, it's game over because they know what happens next. It's quadrupling, tenfolding, and so on. And we are on track to these 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 price targets just on Robotaxi that ARK and others are talking about. So, we have to connect these dots, and that means if these things happen, right? If this scenario happens, the reason I'm saying 480 by end of June is not that I can guarantee it's 480, but I can guarantee you if it's not 480, the growth of Tesla and Robotaxi will force the share price in line with my projected model, which means if it's lagging, right? If Wall Street is too dumb to understand that, you're just forcing it to go to 600 in September and so on and so forth. So I don't care how long it lags. The longer it lags, the more exponentially it has to go up, and everyone knows it. So that's how you have to think about it. And that's why you want to go all in. And the market in this case cannot stay irrationally much longer than you can stay liquid because we have a hard forcing function of profits. It's that simple. So that's why this is important. That's why I'm pretty optimistic or bullish on this whole projection. So let's go into scenario 2. Let's assume the stock goes to 360 by June 1st. So basically flat, we had 345. So it hovers around here. Not much happens, goes up very incrementally. In that situation, if you have a hiccup, I think it also goes down to 320. Fast, it also goes up to 480. So it doesn't matter too much if it stays here. I think these numbers don't change much. And then finally, scenario 3, if it drops from here for whatever reason, something bad happens, people lose faith, whatever, and we go below 330 from here, so down 5% from where we are now in the next 2 weeks. I think, of course, then a hiccup can lead to further, downwards pressure, and we go 300 or below. But I think the fast trajectory will catapult it to pretty much the same place. So, and these are all very speculative. I just want to give you a sense of how I think in scenarios. What does it all mean? Well, here's what it means. Here's the leap strategy. This is the options strategy. All of that stuff is especially and only important for options investors. We are not options traders. We are options investors because we have a long-term conviction in Tesla and we just use options to leverage. So what it means in a run-up scenario 1, here's exactly what I'm going to do. If I see the stock running up, the downside gets much bigger in terms of percentage and the gains, are much easier to capitalize on. So what I'm going to do is, here we have the live stream chat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce my leap portfolio that is currently 50% of my entire Tesla position. So I'm a little deep in leaps because I knew this is ridiculous what's going to happen. So I shifted shares into leaps. I want to reduce it by up to 50%. Okay. I want to reduce my leaps by up to 50% because when you think about the downside, if you go up to 400, if anything bad happens, you will lose a lot of money on paper with these leaps short term. If we go sideways, I know what premium decay means in out of the money options, also with the leaps. You just get murdered. You lose 50% of the value. So I don't like the risk. And especially if you go up here, even in the bull scenario, I don't think, like in most scenarios, we are just losing money in the first 2 weeks. And I will go into that in a second. Because in the first 2 weeks, what do you expect is going to happen? Like nothing good really can happen in the first 2 weeks, right? We launched at 15 Robotaxis. Like, what do you imagine would happen? Like, of course, they could come out in week 2 or week 1 and say, you know what, it's all perfect. Let's double it. I'm not saying this cannot happen. It can happen, and then we lose out. But there's so much upside, who cares? But it's much more likely that they just tinker around. They don't even tell us if they deploy more. So in that case, it's a guaranteed sell-off, in my opinion. It's just going to sell off because, in the first 2 weeks. So I don't like it. And then if anything happens, we are in for like a little winter for a few weeks or months even. And then our premiums will look very, very bad. So if it goes up to 400, I think it's a good reason to reduce the leap position up to 50% if you have a big leap position, right? But that does not mean we are selling it and we are out of it. Because in my opinion, the slow or fast trajectory are much more likely than the hiccups or sideways or flatlining. So we want to basically track super closely what trajectory we are actually on by June 15th, day by day, because it could happen any day. If we get any signals here that this rollout is smooth, any signal, we need to act fast and go all back in. So that's my risk mitigation here. This way I feel much more comfortable. If I lose out on some upside because suddenly on day 3 they just double the cars and announce it on X, yeah, sure, stock goes up 10%, we lost out on it, but we are still in with a lot of leaps, and the downside risk is just too high, in my opinion, in these first weeks. Because why would it not sell off? So I think selling off a little bit, reducing the risk and leverage is the smart move. and then get super close in tracking everything that's happening on the ground. And once we realize we are on any of these trajectories here, the red or yellow, I think it's time to absolutely double down, and we will discuss how we double down. Right? If it's fast, if you're on the fast trajectory, more short-term options might become an interesting scenario December 25, but this is extremely risky because you're totally screwed if something goes wrong. And if it's like clear that this is going to work, but there's still some hiccup risk, then you more go towards December 26 or Q1 27 expiration with strike prices. I mean, what I like right now, I'm just sharing my preferences here. If you had 400, a 500 to 600 strike at December 26 gives you a reasonable situation that is actually pretty nice, high delta, everything. If you go too much out of the money to 900 or something, it's just very painful to see your time decay. And if you're on the fast trajectory, I think 500 strike to December 25 is an option if you are very high risk appetite, because you get rewarded if you're right with these, like a lot. But any hiccup, you have 100% loss. Not 100% because we would get out before, but bad loss. Oh, that was scenario 2. So scenario 2, I would reduce basically if you're flatlining with the share price into June 1st, I would also reduce the portfolio, but not by 50%, but only 20%. So they make up 35 to 40% of the total portfolio. So I'm reducing risk, but not as much because it's not as smart. And then you do basically the same thing. You track it day by day and go all in. If the stock goes down, from here, which I think is very unlikely, but if the stock goes down, I would do nothing. I would do nothing. Because if it goes down, the upside just becomes asymmetric. Unless there's some big macro problem, but if the market stays stable or goes up and Tesla goes down into June, I would not do anything because then you have huge asymmetric upside. So that's kind of the situation as I see it. It's very important that we track this very closely. It's all about understanding the Robotaxi, the actual EBITDA projections, and to understand that in this scenario, in 2027, Robotaxi in the fast scenario could already deliver $30 billion in EBITDA. That's what no one has on the radar. Even in the slow scenario, in 2027, it's going to deliver 20% or 30% more EBITDA than the entire company did in 2024. So I think there's a reasonable chance we are here. And these don't get it wrong, right? These things are forcing functions that will force every Wall Street analyst to follow suit. Okay. That's it for now for this first segment. So let's go into your comments. I will make it quick because we have another segment that I need to get done. But let's check out the comments. We have so many comments. Good morning, Joe. Greetings from Romania. Wow, you guys have a lot of politics going on there. So Romania, that's an interesting thing to cover. What else do we have? Why is this so difficult to use, my chat? So weird. So hard to use. Let's do this. Oh. So what do we have? Hopefully Elon is sandbagging. Well, yeah, who knows? Who knows? I hope so too. Will the Model Ys for the Robotaxi network be customized, like a moved steering wheel and pedals? I think that would be very cool. And I think the affordable Model Y will probably be the Robotaxi of choice while we go into, Cybercab. I think it makes a lot of sense to have some customizations on Model Y, but let's see. I think in the first instance, it's not the main topic. The main topic is, can we scale? Once you hit the hundreds of robotaxis, I think then Tesla will be very happy to do some modifications. I've been having difficulty, says Samir, getting to sleep thinking about AI getting out of control. Well, Samir, you have to tune in tomorrow, into tomorrow's live stream. I will have a mega session, a very long session, and churn out basically 5 or so segments on the AI doom situation and what we can do to prevent it. I think we have to separate in our minds a first principle analysis of the reality of AI and what's going to happen and what scenarios we have and predict them accurately without getting emotional, because it's very doomy, the whole situation. And then separately from that, put our action pioneer hat on after we understand the scenarios and say what actually needs to happen to prevent all that stuff. So we need to get into action mode with AI. But great question, Samir. Jo has been scaring us. I know, Gavin. I'm just telling you guys what the problem is with AI. We have 100% probability of all dying if this continues the way it does, which is not good. But it's even worse to not see it. So we can easily change that. Not easily, but we can change it. But we have to be smart. Samir, Gavin says, I'm a simple person, just buy and hold. That's true if you have stocks. With leaps, you have to be a little more. You can't just hold sometimes. Other than having less leverage due to high priced leaps, is there a downside to buying in the money leaps? Well, Kayur, you have to think about it on a continuum, right? On one side, you have stocks, and on the other side, you have far out of the money short-term call options. I would take an Excel sheet and just model it out, right? The key is to not think, just think like a math person. You have a stock of capital, you put it into certain assets. You can see it in the LEAP model that you can get at pioneerlands.net. And you have a certain amount of capital, you model out your returns, and then you just measure the return on capital. And what you see is with leaps, you get, if the stock goes up 70%, your leaps go up 300%, 700%. If you take certain leaps in certain situations, right? And you have to basically create a risk return profile of your, simulated portfolio. And what you will see is, well, it's the old trade-off, right? If you get more leverage with your capital out of the money versus at the money or in the money, of course, it's becoming much safer. But if you go super in the money with leaps, at some point you're approximating stocks. And because you can put leverage on stocks. And I think that's actually preferable sometimes to leaps, while you have to be cautious. The upside of leveraged stocks over leaps is you don't have time decay. You just pay interest. It's way less than time decay. And so if you have the choice between leveraged stocks and leaps, and they basically give you the same return because it's deep in the money leaps, you are in much better shape just in terms of avoiding churn with leveraged stocks. Now, the downside is if you have a drop, you might have a margin call, and that's very bad for you. But at the same time, if it goes down, you have the leaps, you lose a lot of time. So when do you think we see the first cyber cap on the road? I think in December or January. They will have pre-production models out on the road. I think Tesla's main objective right now, before we even talk about cybercap, is prove that they can get to 1,000 robotaxis. They have to get the kinks out and see that they can scale. That is the all decisive question. The cybercaps are no-brainer, easy to produce. Everything is simple. That is the situation. Okay, let's get into the next segment, which is a fun little segment. So let's get into the next segment for today. Welcome to this important segment on a very key question that is relevant for Robotaxi launch and our predictions of what is happening to FSD. Not in a tactical sense for June, but more in a strategic sense. And today I want to discuss what type of genius Elon Musk is. I think we all agree he is a genius, but what type of genius? We have a typology of genius and what that means for Tesla FSD. I had a lot of discussions on X with smart people and with dumb people and everyone in between on FSD, on LiDAR, why FSD is going to work or not work, and how do we categorize this. And I want to go through a post I did on X that summarizes the situation very nicely. Let me do it right now and understand what that all means. So here's my post. And in that post, it was a great discussion. I started to think about genius. And when people use genius, they use it very interchangeably, right? They say, oh, Newton is probably a genius. Einstein for sure is a genius. And what about Elon, and what does it mean to be a genius, and why is this all important for predicting if Elon can solve FSD and self-driving? So before I go into the details of the typology of genius, many of you are Tesla shareholders and ask yourself, why would I listen to a topology of geniuses? To typology of geniuses. It's very simple. You have this debate on X where people say Tesla is a fraud. This is stupid, and Elon cannot solve FSD. His FSD has been sucking for a long time. Why do you guys are so delusional to believe they can just launch Robotaxi when Waymo and Google have failed to do it? You're stupid. You're crazy, you Tesla fanboys. Right? That's one side of the equation. They say he doesn't even have LiDAR. Okay. And then the other side of the equation are the pro Elon fans of FSD. And they say, dude, this guy can land a rocket with chopsticks and catch it. What are you talking about? FSD is so easy. So I had to think about that argument. It's like, well, we have to be a little higher resolution than both sides. And I had to think about genius. I know Elon is some form of genius, but I also know that Elon is not able to do certain things that Einstein did or Newton did that even Nikola Tesla did. So, and I know that Einstein probably wouldn't be able to do certain things that Nikola Tesla did. And both Nikola Tesla and Einstein would not be able to do certain things that Elon does. That's for sure. But this is not one dimension. They can all do certain things. And my typology here, that is very important, because you will see why in the end. You will see why this is such an important question that will help us really predict what Elon will succeed at and what Elon will fail at. And that is pure gold in terms of investment returns, to understand what he can do and where he's a genius and where he's not. So to dive into it, what kind of genius do you even have? Well, the kind of geniuses, my typology is based on the type of problems these geniuses can solve. And there are three types of problems I would identify that are very distinct and different. And, you know, in correlation to the problems, you will have three types of geniuses, and I will reveal very soon in a second what type of genius Elon is. So these types of problems, of big problems of humanity, what are these types, right? What I'm saying here is Newton, Einstein, Heisenberg. These are the physicists, the mathematicians. They are good in solving a specific type of problem, which is something that is very, very hard logically, that is very, very new logically, and that is very, very unintuitive for people, right? It's not common sense to sit there and, invent the mathematical equations that Newton developed, and differential equations. And if you are Einstein, it's not very intuitive to say, all this matter around us and you see all the energy. Actually, it's the same thing. Electricity and your building you're in, same stuff. That's not intuitive. Or if you say, if you travel really fast, the time just stops. It's like, no, that's not intuitive. It's true, it's not intuitive. In order to get there, you need a very specific type of genius that goes into the weeds. To put it mildly, Einstein was sitting there in the patent office and thinking about what happens if I jump on a ray of light and travel at the speed of light. He looked at all the math equations, and he looked at that and thought about it and dreamt about it for years and years and years. And then it plugged in his little brain, E equals mc squared, bing, nuclear bombs, right? Heisenberg, same thing, the uncertainty, what is it called in English? The uncertainty theory, right? That you cannot determine the exact place and the speed of a particle with high accuracy. The more it's actually wrong to say if you measure the changes, is all stupid. Like, it's just mathematically a fact that you cannot look into these microparticles and actually determine the location and the speed at the same time, which is also very unintuitive. Okay, first type of problem, first type of genius. The second type of genius and second type of problem are inventors, technical geniuses. Because Newton, Einstein, Heisenberg, they're all not technical geniuses. They didn't invent machines or nuclear bombs. They discovered very unintuitive, complicated math and physics equations. They discovered rules, laws of nature. Inventors like Tesla or Zuse, who invented the kind of a very important piece of the semiconductor, they invent things that didn't exist before. You can look it up. Nikola Tesla, one of the great geniuses, they invent stuff that just no one has thought about. And that's also not what Elon does, right? These people go out and say, you know what? When I connect these weird scientific discoveries that the first type of genius does, and I think about the world, I determine that it should be possible to invent a weird machine that does something crazy, like Tesla's towers, the energy towers and stuff like that. Or Tsu's like, oh, we could actually invent an electronic computer, stuff like that. So it's not something anyone understands why you would even do it, but it opens up a whole new crazy thing of capabilities. Another person who probably falls into this is Watt, like the inventors of the steam engine. There was no steam engine. It was not that everyone was running around going, oh, I wonder how you build a steam engine. It's like, no, they didn't know what a steam engine is. They came up with it. And that these are or Gutenberg. Gutenberg is another of these guys who invents the printing press. It's not that there was a printing press and he optimized it. He said, no, oh, I could actually do something that does something crazy that no one even needs right now. It would print stuff. And then we can mass print and create mass media. But he didn't even think of that exactly. He's like, oh, I could just print and then it's so efficient. And I would invent a completely new machine that does that. Like, that is a leap of genius. Second type of problem. So not scientific discovery, but technical invention of a completely new type. And then you have the third types of geniuses. And that is Elon Musk. What is like, I have to look into the history of the steam engine if he was a Musky guy or a Nikola Tesla guy. I don't know. Here, I put him here. It depends like what the situation with the steam engines was. If that was a widely known problem and he made it better, or if he actually invented the steam engine the first, or not the first time. But so I call these last category of geniuses reality engineers. The second type of genius builds on the discoveries of the first type. And the third type builds on the discoveries of the second type. Very different skill sets. So the reality engineers, what they do, and that is Elon Musk, that is Ford, that is Benz, the inventor of the car, the combustion engine, Ford, the inventor of the conveyor belt and mass production of the, and then Edison, of course, the light bulb and the energy systems, the electricity systems and the power plants. What people forget about Edison, he wasn't so much an inventor. He was just accumulating the inventions and built systems around it that actually solved big problems. That's the special thing about Edison. And then Steve Jobs. I was never a big fan of Steve Jobs, but the more I think about these things, he was kind of a genius because he invented the whole iPhone, the whole way to turn mobile phones into platforms that did not exist. That was a new thing. Same with the iPod. So he really was a reality engineer. He has a vision of a new world that people just don't see and builds it. And Elon, of course, the supermaster in being a reality engineer. So why is this all important? Because all of these people here, Ford, Benz, Edison, Jobs, and Musk, are not inventors. They're not inventing new stuff, and they would be probably not very good at it because it requires a different type of brain. And they're definitely not Einsteins and Heisenbergs. They could not do that. They could not invent some crazy new physics inside. And vice versa. Einstein could never build SpaceX. No way. And Tesla could never build Tesla, ironically. No way, because they're tinkerers. They're doing something different. So why is this important and what can we learn from that? Oh, it's extremely important. And here's why. When you look at SpaceX, for example, what Tesla, the EVs, nothing in SpaceX and nothing in the Tesla EVs required Einstein-level discoveries. There was no question physics-wise. It was clear. Elon always said, well, I do the physics. Well, why can Elon do the physics? Because it's basic physics. It's not new physics that no one has invented yet. Elon never touches this stuff because he knows he can't do it and he knows the time is not ripe and he knows he has to wait for some genius to invent new physics. It's not his job. Same thing, by the way, for really new inventions. If you want to build a self-landing rocket, sure, you have to tweak all kinds of stuff, but there's no thing in there that requires a fundamentally new invention. Fundamentally new inventions are not improved steering, improved chips, improved, self-steering rockets, fundamental inventions would be warp drive or something. Well, warp drive is specifically difficult because it would first require a Einstein level discovery, then a Tesla level invention, and then reality engineering into rockets. So what Elon basically wants is, he's good, like Steve Jobs. He didn't need any scientific discovery. He didn't need any inventions. He had everything at his disposal, but he recombined the components of reality in a way that created a completely new reality. So these type 3 geniuses, they shine the most when they find something where all the key inventions have been already achieved, all the scientific discoveries needed for the new reality are already there, and then they just bring it together, which is an enormous, complicated skill, by the way, maybe the most valuable skill of all. But it's not these other two. So SpaceX, great example. In 2000, when it was found, 2001 or 2002, nothing was missing in the equation to build these rockets. It's just very hard and you have to do it, and you have to tinker around a lot, but it's possible. Same with EVs. When you could use the laptop batteries, put them all together, chain them into a chain, then you can refine the batteries, then you can do all these things. You don't need to be a type 1 or type 2 genius. So why is it so important? Well, because when it comes to FSD, I saw this guy on X. I think I responded. This was a response. He said, inventing FSD is 10 times harder than building Starship. And then another guy who is a pro Tesla person says, you're stupid. Says who? That's a stupid argument. Says who? And that triggered my whole thing, because that is the exact question it all comes down to. Is autonomy, is FSD, self-driving, a type 2 problem? Does it require maybe even type 1 discoveries in AI? Spoiler alert, definitely not type 1 problems. Doesn't, you don't need to reinvent physics for it. But does it require some Tesla level genius to invent a new type of neural net that does it, that just doesn't exist right now? Or not? Or is FSD solely a problem of tweaking and combining existing components into new systems and scaling compute, scaling data, tweaking neural nets, tuning them, maybe inventing some basic new algorithms, but nothing crazy? Or does it actually require some leap? And that question is very important, because if it requires a type 2 discovery, I think we are screwed. I think Elon cannot do that and Tesla cannot do that. But if it doesn't, if it's purely something you can tweak your way inside, with the existing technology, or, by the way, if the discovery, the type 2 invention is needed, that it comes out of the entire AI ecosystem and is in the works, then we're also not screwed. So what is my take on it? Here's my surprising take. I think in 2020 or 2021, it was a type 2 invention. And that's why I think Elon overpromised, and Elon had no path to solving FSD in 2019 or 20. There was no path. That's why it never worked. And Elon was basically overpromising with no clear path, completely betting that this discovery and invention he needs, or these series of inventions, comes out of left field at some point. So I think Elon was wrong in the beginning, but he got a little lucky. Maybe it was more than luck. Maybe he triangulated the larger ecosystems of AI inventions. And I think in 2023, around there, something happened that unlocked their ability to do end-to-end neural nets. Because some people say they just had an idea, and this is not that simple. They didn't just have the idea. A lot of basic inventions came together from the whole world in the AI revolution. The level of compute, the new chips, the new algorithms, the know-how, the critical amount of know-how that changed something. And that's where we went from FSD 11 to 12 to 13 and see where we are at now. Now, how sure am I that I'm right, that the type of problem FSDs is a type 3 problem, not a type 2? I'm not completely certain. I just have a lot of evidence that it is a type 3 problem. I have a lot of evidence that FSD is a problem that can be solved with existing technologies and components by tweaking them and combining them and scaling them. Why do I believe that? Two reasons. First of all, we see the incremental improvements or very non-incremental improvements from FSD 11 to 13. And second, we are in an extremely exponential development cycle of AI, which means if there is any foundational invention that is missing on an algorithmic basis or model basis, the probability that the missing piece will be invented as we speak somewhere in the world in this crazy, crazy explosion of AI is also very high. So I think we have a double safety valve here that we are actually dealing with a type 3 problem. And if it's a type 3 problem, Elon is guaranteed to solve it. If it's a type 2 problem, Elon is not going to solve it, but I think there's a high likelihood if there are remaining type 2 problems that someone else in the world is going to solve it and Tesla is going to suck it up into the company. So that's why I'm strategically very confident. If it's a true type 3, clean type 3 problem at this point, it's just going to work like a charm. So that's my take on it. As you can tell, Tesla forces me to think about things. And I think this is actually a good categorization of problems and geniuses. So I hope from now on, when we talk about geniuses, we can be a little more discerning. There are different types of geniuses. You can't interchange them. Each genius is only genius in their specific problem type. And it's important to understand what's going on in the brains of geniuses because it informs us what kind of problem they can actually solve. I hope that was helpful. See you very soon. And we can now go into some more questions, by the way, for our live audience. I hope that was not too crazy and boring. Let's see. Where are we at? B, great name, B. The cyber cap will only come when the system is 100% stable, I believe, since Elon expected general. Well, B, I would say the cyber cap comes when FSD is proven and it's scaling and everyone is happy. Because before it's way too risky to start cyber cap at scale. But I think it's all going to work out very nicely. They're preparing this. They will be ready in Q1 and they will hopefully see in July, August or something that things are good. If a person then asks if a person was to place a limit order to sell a few shares, planning on buying them back on a sell the news, what amount would that be? What amount or what limit order? What? Well, that depends. Depends on your capital. So Dan, this is all a question. It's always important to see your portfolio and then percentages and how much you want to actually allocate into Tesla. That's your important question. I'm like all into Tesla. I have some side holdings, but in terms of stocks, it's all Tesla. And if a person was to place a limit order to sell a few shares, planning on buying them back on a sell the news. Well, I don't believe in limit orders too much on these weekly and strategic investment. Is more like a day trading thing because limit orders, I don't believe in it. I think I observe the whole thing and say, okay, it's time to sell. Like we had 400, 410, let's get out of some of the leaps and then get back in. I think if you hold shares, all this trading, there's not enough reward in it compared to just holding it. So I think with shares, I would not trade too much. I'm just doing this with leaps because the differentials are so huge. How about this? The new model will be presented on June 1st and will roll out as a Robotaxi. That would be nice. Maybe. Do you think it's going to be a quiet rollout in June or will there be a big event? I think it's going to be not quiet. I think they will just roll it out and Elon will tweet a little bit, which is enough. Elon is the GOAT, says Gavin, probably close to Edison. I agree. I think Edison is a great comparison. Not Tesla, Edison. Edison is a type 3 genius. Elon is a type 3 genius. He's not perfect as he did vote for Biden. I don't know. Did he? I have no idea what he did. Uncertainty principle, die Unschärfe-Relation. That's how the Germans call it. Uncertainty, Unschärfe. It's not even uncertainty. They translated it wrong. It's not uncertainty. I can't even translate Unschärfe. It's like unsharpness, sharpness in terms of precision. Die Imprecision, die Unschärfe-Relation. Ach, you can't translate these things. It's the imprecision relation or something. Uncertainty principle is a little lame. Gil, I like Joe's content far more than the other Tesla creators. However, all jobs gone by 2000 seems far-fetched. A dentist, a nurse, an elderly care plumber. Well, Gil, you also have to tune in. First of all, thank you. And you have to tune in tomorrow where we have a mega marathon live session on AI. This will be a little bit part of it, but it will be mostly about doom. And it will be about how we get out of this and what we have to do. It's going to be very exciting. Well, my all jobs gone in 2030, it's all relative what all means. For example, if no one gets hired anymore for any job, I think that's pretty bad. Even if people are still working some jobs. And of course, all the blue collar or everything with physical labor requires the robots. But I think by 2030, we are dealing with some major robot armies. So white collar jobs, forget them. They're toast. They're extremely toast. And the other jobs, I think in 2030 will be under extreme pressure. And all jobs gone means more like what is there are two ways of looking at jobs. Is jobs everyone's job? Or is job a thing you can apply to? I think all jobs gone for me means more like there is nothing to apply to anymore. No one gets hired. It does not mean that everyone gets actively fired by then. That's a different question. Elon also predicted this in 3 to 4 years. I agree. Gavin, I don't know exactly what that refers to. I'm too late. I'm delayed. Predicted this in 3 to 4 years. Maybe the EBITDA, the profit. 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What's the difference? We are long-term investors. Well, it depends. When you're into options, even a month makes a huge difference, right? So yeah, sure, for long-term investors who just keep and hold their shares, it's not the greatest difference. Kayana, Joe, would love your thoughts on the importance of community, family in a post-labor economy. I have major concerns about my generation's attitudes towards raising kids. Well, that's a very good question and a very big topic. Well, first we have to understand what a post-labor economy even means. I think it means you have a problem unless you're a pioneer, unless you are very good in reality engineering and can shape futures by doing similar things to Elon. But, we all have to learn to do that, because if we don't, we will be worthless for the economy of the future. And the idea that someone is going to give us money voluntarily is just a dumb idea. It means you don't understand how humans work. Whoever controls the money is not going to voluntarily give it to everyone. So I think for those who turn into reality engineers, that's why we're building pioneerlands.net, because I think it's important to figure that out. We will have enormous abundance. Part of reality engineering is also investing in the right stuff. And then kids are very, very important. I think kids are, become actually much more important than they were. And I think there will be a whole reorganization of society very quickly, very soon. Bye feminism, for example. And a lot of things will massively change in the next 5 years in terms of society, because the whole family planning and personal life planning will just completely change. Everything changes. Politically, for example, mass migration will also change, because the narrative that you need to import all these people that are a misfit in Europe, at least, is now completely out of the window. We don't have the problem that we don't have enough laborers. We have the opposite problem. We will have too many because of robots. So the whole thing will be put completely on its head, or on the feet, whatever your perspective is, with massive political and cultural implications. Once you have abundance for the people who are pioneers, that will unlock, a lot of family things, because women, for example, can now stay home, because everyone can stay home, because there is no work anymore. Right. And then it's much more free how you decide what you actually want to do. So it will trigger this whole reassessment of what do we actually want as humans. It's going to be very interesting. I don't talk about this a lot, and it's actually hard to get people interested in this for some reason. because everyone is so scared of talking about family and kids. It's like such a difficult topic because no one is allowed to talk about it. Hoping housing market drops big when mass layoffs happen. Why do you hope that the housing market drops big? Do you want to buy houses, Gil? Why do you want houses if no one can live in them? Hi, everyone. Joshua, hi. Do you think it would be helpful to have an LLM narrative layer in FSD at some point? The car would have a commentary about its surrounding, like could be a person I should slow down. Oh, you mean like to actually for someone to track the thinking? Maybe, could be for the analysts inside Tesla and FSD. L. Schulz. I believe Elon can see when type 2 problems can become type 3, and that is one of his superpowers, like when he saw EVs became a viable tech. Brilliant. L. Schulz is 100% right. I think that is one of his superpowers, and that is actually a superpower. If you are in a position to predict when type 2 problems turn into type 3, that's the goal. You want to be a little ahead, or if they just happened, you want to be ahead, because that's a first principle change of the world. And also this first principle talk is especially valuable when type 2 turns into type 3, because the first principles of reality change at that point. Every time type 2 turns into type 3, the principles of reality just changed and no one gets it. And so that's your alpha as a pioneer. You can say, wait, they don't understand that this stuff is now possible. Whereas solving type 2 problems, I do think, by the way, but that's just my crazy theory, I think you can corporatize and strategize and institutionalize the solution of type 2 and type 1 problems, but no one has ever done it. I mean, university have tried it, right? But they are so incredibly, insanely inefficient and become more and more inefficient that I wouldn't say they solve the problem. But the ability to deploy capital and willpower into solving type 2 and type 1 problems is like probably the biggest thing you can ever invent. And I have some ideas how I would do it. But it requires a different type of organization. But you're totally right. That's the superpower. Same, by the way, with Edison. What was Edison's great strength? He saw electricity and power plants. He saw wires. He saw light bulbs. These are all type 2 problems that had been solved, but power plants were useless. Why do you need a power plant? Like no one needs electricity. So what's the use of power plants? Then he saw light bulbs. Like, well, no one can connect light bulbs to power because the power plant is on one side of the city and the light bulbs on the other. So it's impossible. You can't transport electricity. So boom, you're toast. And then he saw the wires. Like, well, they do transport electricity. So, let me think about it. And then Edison said, why don't we just connect it? And you could have the power plants that deliver wired stuff into the light bulbs, and then people could put a switch on, and then bing, you have light at night that is not candlelight. And then of course all the analysts or whatever said, you're just stupid. You know how expensive it is to produce these wires, and do you know how difficult it is, and who even needs lights at night? That's so stupid. A candle is 10 million times cheaper. But Edison did the math and said, like, I disagree. I think this could scale. And then all the Wall Street analysts said, you're crazy, Edison. Like, sure, wires scale. Sure, electricity scales. It's ridiculous. Electricity doesn't scale. Guess who was right? Electricity does scale pretty nicely. Planning on rotating from crypto to Tesla, but Tesla is going up a lot. When is it too late to buy Tesla? Well, of course, I'm not giving advice here, but my price target is 11,000. I think Bitcoin has also some ways to go up, but not as much as Tesla. Exactly, Joshua. That's on a 5-year time scale. I don't know. I don't have a price target on Bitcoin because I'm not an expert on Bitcoin, but it's somewhere much higher than now. What else do we have? Don't rotate if you have to pay tax. That's another problem. Yes. If you have enough Bitcoin, just first move into a country where it's tax-free before you do the rotation. It's worth to go 1 year off. That saves you if you have like a few million in gains. I live in Portugal. We don't pay tax on crypto. What? Is that true? I can't believe that. Portugal is tax-free for long-term capital gains. Okay, Gavin says, I have a theory that when we reach hyperabundance, then we will have or kids are no longer financially constrained. I don't know what my means. Nobody was allowed to talk about family and kids in George Orwell's 1984. Well, George Orwell's 1984 is Joe Biden's 2022. So, yes, we are here. Everything that is important, we are not allowed to talk about. We have to talk about the weather. Exactly. Go on LinkedIn and see what people post, all the corporate talk. That's what you're talking. Oh, we are proud to, we are a mission-driven company. We believe in purposeful growth and we can do it together with inclusion and diversity. That's what you're allowed to say. If you say anything else, go to jail. Kids were property of the state. Exactly. Moore says Kevin. So very good. So glad to have you guys on here. We are gonna chop these up and have them out as videos, but tomorrow is the big AI marathon. That's gonna be hot. I'm gonna brand it as AI because there will be not much Tesla talk involved there. So let's see how this goes. But very good to talk to you guys and hope to see you very soon.